Hi, we've been live for, I don't know, 10 seconds. Something's going on with my software, so I'm just going to fix it on the fly. Welcome. My name is David Safir, and you are joining Cash Flow Confidence Live, where finance pros learn to become fearless cash flow advisors. I'm David Safir, here to help you close a clarity gap that you may have on how to grow advisory impact for your clients. Let's dive in. The most powerful advisory skills are isn't about digging into the number and producing more numbers like key ratios and indicators, but they're about digging into uncovering the human issues behind the business systems and behind those numbers. Today, I will be talking about why analysis can only show symptoms and rarely identifies the real problem, why the ratio and report trap can keep you stuck as a technician instead of an advisor, and understanding business systems through the people who run them, and finally, how to diagnose the human factors that create the numbers you're seeing. So let's dive into it. Segment one: analysis shows symptoms, not problems. When you realize and analyze numbers, you're looking at outcomes. You're looking at the symptoms of decisions that were already made yesterday, 2 days ago, a week ago, a year ago. Analysis tells you what is happening, it cannot tell you why it's happening or what to do. Let me give you an example. Your accounts receivables are going up from a day's sales outstanding perspective. If you're just selling more and your accounts receivables are going up, great, but not when it's aging and aging and aging. You can easily see that from pretty standard reports that your accounts receivable aging is going, let's say, from 45 days to 78 days. And you can only guess why. And it could be lots of things. One, off the top of my head, a sales rep and their manager extended terms to a client without reporting it to you, so you weren't aware of it, or maybe even not even to the owner. Number two, possibly there's a new accounts receivable rep who's got to send out the invoices and they don't know how to do it and they're too embarrassed to ask. Number three, possibility that the owner has started saying, "Hey, listen, I had a problem with another client. They basically said, we're not doing business anymore with you because you're trying too hard to collect from us. So it's okay. Don't try to collect from anybody," which means no phone calls. You don't know until you start looking at it. And financial analysis is like taking a temperature. If you take somebody's temperature and it's too high, what do you know? You know they have a fever. But do you know what the cause of the fever is? Do they have the flu? Do they have some kind of a random infection? Do they have a broken bone that's festering and maybe if you don't deal with it, it's going to turn gangrene? Just giving a painkiller is not going to fix the problem. It's the same thing when we're trying to fix by the numbers and just throwing something at it. We're guessing, we're not solving. Segment two: the ratio and report trap. This is how we get stuck. The client has a problem, cash flow problem. We calculate ratios, we calculate the current ratio. We looked at day sales outstanding, like I talked about, and you can say, here's a problem, here's a problem, here's a problem, here are the numbers. The problem persists. So we build more detailed reports. Here's the breakdown over 90 days, over 60 days, over 30 days, but it doesn't change the outcome. So we create a KPI dashboard and says, okay, this is the indicators. It still doesn't fix anything. The clients become overwhelmed instead of empowered. Why does this happen? First of all, it feels productive, feels professional, it feels safe. Numbers don't argue back, and it's history. So we just don't, it's something that's comfortable. It also avoids an uncomfortable conversation. If you have to talk to somebody, maybe you're not comfortable doing that. If that's the case, if you're not comfortable talking to people, I suggest you don't even try advisory or make the decision that you're going to get comfortable. And finally, and this could be the biggest reason, is most of us are trained to do numbers. We've gone to school for accounting, for finance, MBA, whatever it is, and it's numbers, numbers. Let's crunch the numbers. But this is the hard truth. Your client doesn't have a not enough analysis problem. They have a people aren't doing the right thing problem. You can't solve that with another spreadsheet or another fancy looking dashboard. And every hour that you spend building sophisticated reports or dashboards or digging is an hour you're not spending uncovering the human issue creating the problem. Yeah, reports are comfortable. Advisory conversations are uncomfortable, but only one creates transformation. Segment 3, business systems run on people. Every business system at the root is ultimately a people system. The numbers are just output. You have an automated assembly line. Who put it together? People. So if something goes wrong, you can quote unquote blame somebody or look at what the root cause is, and maybe somebody made the wrong decision somewhere building out the assembly line. But most of what we do from a business process perspective is a chain of human decisions. Looking at the AR, possibly the salesperson decides what the terms are or their manager. And what are they motivated by? They're motivated by commission. So let's sell as much as possible, get the terms that we're going to get the sales. The bookkeeper decides when to send the invoices. Somebody hopefully decides to check the invoice to see if it's right or not. And then who decides when to pay? It's not you, it's not your customer, it is your customer's client. The person you're advising, the business you're advising, their clients decide when to pay. Terms are given, but they don't have to live up to the terms if they decide not to. And then the owner decides whether or not to enforce anything and where the controls are. Every decision point is where the system can break, not because of a formula, but because we're dealing with people, human judgment, human motivation, human discomfort, and just simple mistakes. Your job is not to do calculations. Your job is to investigate this chain that we just described, working backwards and figure out where it's breaking. Or you can work forward. I find it easier to work backwards. Is somebody making a mistake somewhere that's obvious and one weak link is broken, or is it a bunch of things? Oftentimes, it's multiple things that don't happen. A business system is just what people do repeatedly. To change the output of the system, you need to change what people do. And you can't change what people do until you understand why they're doing it the current way. You need to talk. So let's get into why they're doing it. Segment 4, the 4 human factors framework. I'm going to go through this quickly. Take notes or rewind. Either way. Factor number 1, clarity. Do they understand? Do they understand how their decisions are impacting the business, how it's impacting cash flow? Do they see the downstream consequences? Let me give you an example. A purchasing manager is going to order 6 months of inventory because of volume pricing. It saves money per unit. Do they understand they're tying up let's just call it $180,000 because it's $30,000 per month. They're tying up $180,000 in inventory costs more, and that cost of holding that money in inventory costs way more than the cost savings. Oftentimes, when I see this, it's because where do they get the money from to pay for the 180,000, the excess inventory? They borrow it. And they're not borrowing it at 6% or 2%. It's not the prime rate. Let's say it's 12%, that's 1% a month. So in just 2 months, you have killed your profit. If they're borrowing at 24%, which is more often closer to 24%, that's 2% a month. You hold the inventory for 1 month and it kills the savings. So, how do you figure this out? You ask, walk me through. How did you make the decision? W- Why did you make, and do you know what the results are? What are you trying to optimize for? And if they're trying to optimize for cost and not for the big picture, not for cash flow, there you go. It's not another report. It's education showing the cash impact in terms that they understand. In this case, you simply say $180,000, 2% interest a month. That is the cost. The other 5 months that you're waiting in inventory, you are now killing whatever profit that you built into saving 2%. Let's go on to factor number two, authority. Can they act? Do they have the power to make the changes? Are there political barriers? Who really controls the decision? Let's go back to that operations manager who bought 6 months of inventory and he knows that it's too high and has a reduction plan of how to drop the inventory. But the owner overrides the decision and says, but what if we run out? The motivation for the manager might just be because he's listening to the owner and the owner is afraid to run out of inventory. The manager has this clarity, but they don't have authority to make the changes to reduce the inventory. That's called the authority problem. And what happens when you try to change this? This is the question. What happens when you try to change it? If you know about it, why not? Why aren't you changing it? So, do you have the final say? Who does? Ask the questions. What fixes this issue is organizational restructuring. And I'm not talking about people get fired and hired. I'm talking about job responsibilities and levels of authority. Who has the rights to decisions? And sometimes it's the uncomfortable conversation with the owner to help them understand they might not have clarity of these decisions that are impacting their own company. It's oftentimes the case. Factor three, incentives. What's the incentive for them to change? And probably their incentive to do something exactly like they are doing it. Let's take that manager who's the operations manager. What is she incented on? Is she incented on reducing costs? If that's the case, yeah, why stop at 6 months? Buy a year's worth of inventory and get 4% off. Of course, that's a terrible idea, but that's the mindset. What can we do to reduce costs? And so, how do you figure this out? You ask the question, what are you evaluated on? What gets you praised versus gets you in trouble? How do you fix it? Is you realign compensation, whether it's monetary compensation or pats on the back or this is what we need to do. And you realign what the people's motivations are to be in line with cash flow, with overall profitability, etc. Sometimes you have to completely restructure performance compensation. If it's a salesperson, everybody's thinking sales. You might want to think about margins, something else other than sales, because sales can produce bad behaviors. That's a story for another day. Factor four, capability. Can they execute? Do they currently have the skills, or do they have tools, or do they have training that needs to be done? Let's take a look at the manager, the operations manager, and if they have 10 SKUs they're dealing with, that's not a big deal. But what if they have 100, 200, 400, 1,000 parts that they're dealing with that they have to purchase for? And they do not have the tools that are built for them or the skills to build their own tool. Let's just say an Excel spreadsheet. They don't know how to, or they just don't even know where to start. Or maybe it's a bookkeeper who could be running reports because all the inventory reports are in the system. They don't know how to produce the reports and they're too scared to act. That's what is a capability problem. The fact that they're not capable of making the changes. And how do you figure this out? You ask questions like, well, how did you learn this? And what tools are you using? And what would make this easier for you to do this job and make the changes? Training fixes this. Simpler processes, sometimes restructuring roles or sharing roles where you're giving somebody help. Let's say the operations department doesn't know how to do the spreadsheet, but finance, you've got a whiz kid there and knows how to do the spreadsheet. Put them together, build the capacity. Take a look at a real world case study. This is true client. I had a client, about $2 million manufacturing company. And I was hired to figure out why revenue was going down a little bit and profits were going down faster, but they were selling just as many units year to year because they were running flat out. The factory was 24/7, but yet they were going down in revenue and in profitability. Why? The previous analysis showed when I came in and said, Tell me what's going on." It showed exactly what I said. They're shipping as much as they could and they're shipping as efficiently as possible. So keep the costs down. And there was nothing more they could do, quote unquote. When I started talking to people and looking around, I noticed and they told me, well, we ship to our biggest clients first. Those are distributors. Okay, that's good. All right, good to know. And then who do you ship to second? Then, well, to our retail clients, but they're falling away. We're not getting as many orders from them. So we have more to ship to our distributors and we ship the rest of the retail. Oh, and by the way, when we get internet orders, if we've got the product on hand, we'll grab it and ship it, but they have to wait sometimes because sometimes we just don't have the products because we're shipping so many to our wonderful customers called distributors. They take big orders. Well, we kept digging. Yes, we did analyze numbers. And what we discovered was they were shipping in reverse order of profitability. And they were selling to the lowest margin customers first and the lowest price point customers first, those distributors, and the highest price point and the highest margin customers last, which is the internet buyers. So, why? That's the digging part. It's because they got more revenue faster by shipping big, large customer orders. And then the large orders cost less per unit. It was more efficient. The shipping costs per unit were less for freight as well as the manpower it took to put the orders together and move on to the next one. They focus on revenue and cost and speed of revenue, not total revenue, not on margin, not on profitability, not on cash flow, not on total revenue. Normal behavior. This is normal that's what they focused in on. And it's because they had a clarity gap. And then we dug more. Why did they have fewer and fewer retail orders? Well, it's because the retailers were getting frustrated. They weren't getting orders shipped on time. So, where did they get the product? They didn't go to a competitor. These were fairly unique products. They went to the distributors because the distributors always had product because we were shipping to them first. So, it created this downward spiral. The employees, so then I said, Let me ask you a question. What about partial shipments? I asked this, right? What about partial shipments? Well, we're not allowed to do partial shipments. Oh, okay. Well, did you actually ask the distributors if we could do partial shipments? I've worked with distributors. They usually take partial shipments. What was unique about this? And so, yeah, what did they ask? Did you ask them? Uh, no, we didn't actually ask them. We just know that they won't accept it. Oh, okay. Well, I'll tell you what. Could you please ask them? And if you don't want to, that's okay. I'll ask them. Okay, we'll ask them. Oh, you know what? They said yes, we can ship. Partial shipments. Well, what do you know? So that was another thing. It was a false belief. So they had clarity issues. They didn't know that they were shipping lower revenue and lower margins for the same products. And they didn't know that distributors would take partial shipments. They lacked authority to ship partial shipments in the um, in the shipping department. So there's an authority issue also, and perceived lack of authority from the distributors. And there was an incentive issue. They were misaligned. They were rewarded or given attaboys for low costs, not margins. And guess what was happening? It was getting worse and worse. So there was more and more pressure to reduce costs as opposed to maximize revenue, maximize margins. Do they have capacity and capability? Absolutely. Once we revealed this, we figured out a way to reverse the order. Those internet shipments went out first. Second was retailers, and then the partial orders to the distributors. And lo and behold, $2 million company, we unlocked $250,000 of net incremental gross margin dropped straight to the bottom line. That's a ton of profit. And it also impacted the top line, which is not as important, but it did. So revenue started going up, and so did the gross margin, and so did profitability. Did it cost them more to ship? Yes, it cost them a little bit more in freight, a little bit more in manpower, but it was more than offset. That's an advisory solution. That's what you're going for, is creating these wonderful solutions that are then reflected after the fact in the numbers. Do the analysis, but then talk to the people. That's how you get authority, clarity, incentives, and everything else aligned. So here's some objections that I hear about. Oh, but financial analysis, that's my value. That's what I do really, really well. That's what I'm trained to do. Said, well, great. It's a tool. And if that's what you want to do, keep doing it. But don't think that you're doing advisory work. You're doing analysis work. You won't be able to solve your clients' problems. And quite frankly, anybody coming out of school can calculate that ratio. So can AI. However, you it takes real skill to dig deep. Objection number two I get. My clients expect comprehensive analysis. Won't they think that I'm not doing my job? Well, my answer to that is I have never heard of a client complaining they haven't had enough analysis done. I've never heard a client say, I'm so proud of my dashboards, even if it's showing that they're going down. These are just wonderful. What do they want? They want their problems solved. As a matter of fact, confusion often starts happening. The more numbers you throw at them, the more confusing it becomes. Go out, solve problems. All right, here's the last objection I get. Investigating people and systems just sounds like a lot of time. And I can do this other stuff so much faster. It's going to take me away from other work. Well, short term, yeah, it'll take more hours. But long term, it's dramatically faster than trying to guess and trying this and trying that and the other thing. The report approach creates an endless like cycle. Produce a report, client doesn't act, or they act incorrectly. So you produce more reports, problem persists. Going for people and talking to them and digging in will find, and then you can solve the actual problem. And clients pay a premium for problem solving, not for report production. Imagine 1 week, to uncover $250,000 in value if you spend 40 hours and you charge the client $10,000. But you could say at the end of the week, well, but here's $250,000. And it doesn't take a year to see the results. It starts happening immediately. Within a week or two, you can start seeing measurable results. So if this is interesting to you, you need to then hear this next part, which is our sponsor, Pivot. Pivot 2026. It's a unique conference where it's a boot camp live in person, doing a real case study, a real client, and you will learn the 5-step cash is clear system for managing cash flow and modeling and managing and maximizing cash flow for any organization. Half a day of learning and half a day of figuring out how to put this into your business to become a professional advisor. You can see, hopefully, scrolling across the bottom of the screen. If you can't, pivot2026.com, pivot2026.com. Go there, learn more, or drop me a note. And I'll tell you more about Pivot. If you're interested, it's a unique opportunity to go through a true boot camp and get up to speed quickly on cash flow advisory. All right, let's go over takeaways and action items. Takeaway number 1, analysis shows symptoms. Investigation reveals problems. You become a detective, and it's fun. If you like solving problems, you'll love doing advisory work the right way. Number 2, get yourself out of the reporting and ratio trap. It gets you stuck as a technician. Breaking free requires investigating people and systems. Number 3, takeaway: every business system is a people system. You can only change what people do by understanding why they're doing it and impacting their motivation. And how do you figure that out? Motivation is part of the 4 human factors of clarity, authority. Incentives is the motivation, and capability. Figure out if they're capable, if they have the authority, if they understand what the impact is. Your value. Here's the last takeaway. Your value is uncovering the real issues and prescribing the fix. And clients pay premium fees for solutions, not for documentation. All right, if you want to take action, here's what you can do this week. 4 steps, super easy. Pick a client who's having cash flow problems and hasn't solved their problem. Maybe you've talked to them about it, maybe you haven't, doesn't matter. Number 2, stop. If you're doing analysis, stop the analysis. You can start investigating and talk to somebody in the business and start mapping out the business system and identify who are the people. Talk to those people. Number 3, ask those 4-factor questions about clarity, authority, incentives, and capability. All right, I'm holding up more fingers, but you get the idea. And then finally, propose a solution, a human factor, a conversation. Have a conversation and training and figure out what the incentives are. Make and start implementing the changes. Have an uncomfortable conversation. That's the 4 steps. So thank you for tuning into Cashflow Confidence Live. I hope you found today's episode especially valuable and that you have gotten some inspiration to take your advisory skills to the next level. And if you haven't already, please subscribe and follow the show. And we're going to have new episodes delivered to you. And this way you won't miss anything and you can keep learning. I am planning on teaching everything I know over the next years. It'll take me about a year to get through everything in our coursework, etc. Stick with me. I'd love to hear from you. If you have any feedback at all, let me know. If you've got a cash flow problem, let me know. I'll talk to you about it. Might be on the air. I won't use your name. I won't use a company name, but we can talk about the problem and I can help you solve it. Finally, if you want more resources, go to cashisclear.com. Read my blog, Get onto my email list. You can learn a lot. And I had a call from Saudi Arabia, somebody who completely revamped their accounts receivable just by reading and listening to my articles and to my recordings. So if you're really serious about transformation, then we should talk. Get onto my website, reach out to me, or send me an email, david@davidspear.com. Let's talk. Maybe pivot's the right way to go and kick off during a conference, a really concentrated learning experience. Remember, your clients don't need another ratio. They need someone to advise them. And part of that advisory is uncovering the human issues, creating the numbers that they're seeing. Be that advisor. I'm David Safir, and this has been Cashflow Confidence Live. Until next time, go be the confident advisor your clients need.